All right, let's get started. Hi, my name is Imani Tahira Hopkins, and this is my first webinar. This is a webinar based on brain-based learning and how it plays a part in the learning environment, and so just some tools for student engagement that I've used personally, and I'm excited to use in the future. So again, I'm Imani Tahira Hopkins. I'm an artist, a dance artist, specifically choreographer, an educator. I teach arts. I am also an educator at a high school level, as well as a justice advocate, traveling the world, bringing art as an avenue for advocacy. If you'd like to follow along with this presentation, click on bit.ly/tchat001. If you want to chat on Twitter, which we will have more information at the end, you can click on these hashtags or add them to any of your posts. So let's get started. What is brain-based learning and how does data transfer into the brain in an applicable way? We look at those things when it comes to learning and we go, of course, learning is brain-based. Why wouldn't it be? How are we effectively communicating what we're teaching to our learning students? If I only had a brain, if we really want to talk about the differences between how our brains think, it's really important for us to understand how the brain works so that we can effectively teach our subjects to our students. It's just a quote that I love about the brain is that everything we do, every thought we've ever had is produced by the human brain, but exactly how it operates remains one of the biggest unsolved mysteries. And it seems the more we probe its secrets, the more surprises we find. And that is the reason for this ideology of brain-based learning. The more we get to the core of this, the easier it is for us to get a better understanding of how to better teach effectively for our students, all of our students, in all of their different arrays of different learning. So of course we know that the brain has unlimited capacity, except the myth that we're only using 10% of it is not true. It's just that we're only aware of a small part of our brain that we're using. So if we can continue to exercise this muscle to use more and more of our brain, how much more can we effectively enable our students to do so? This is all just an overview of things that we should know, but why is this important for our students? Pretty much our brain likes to explode when you think about just the chasm that is the capacity of our brain, and the things that we can learn as a result of that. So when we're talking about transferring information, which is the retention part or the long-lasting part of learning, the hippocampus is the center for that. It transfers our short-term knowledge to our working brain and eventually to our long-term brain. That function in the brain is something that is not necessarily fully developed in our students, but it can be if addressed in an appropriate order. So there's three main processes that our brain goes through. The first and most important is, am I safe? What my highest priority of information is going to be, what part of this information is threatening to me? It's our fight, flight, or freeze capacity. Immediately we're looking at those things, which is why if you're in a library and you all of a sudden hear a siren, your studying stops for just a moment to make sure that that siren isn't coming to you. That's the Doppler effect. We know that in physics, but connecting that to what we're doing in our classroom, if a student is not feeling safe, whether it's coming from the home or a fight with a friend or not feeling a connection with the teacher or their fellow students, that safety mechanism immediately blocks them from the knowledge that you are trying to give to them. So the danger element, even in a psychological sense, is the first thing that has to be addressed when it comes to looking at information transferring from the short-term to the long-term memory. The second priority is, or the medium information priority, is the emotion brain. And that is really controlled by the amygdala. And we know that from brain development, your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until 25. So for all of us who are teaching in a lower capacity, I mean, even up until undergrad, you're teaching a person or persons who don't have a fully developed reason complex. So for them, the motivation to do something is always connected to a fluctuating amygdala or emotion mind. With that being said, if you don't feel like doing something, you're not going to do it. If you feel bored, if you feel happy, if you feel at ease, all of those things affect how knowledge is transferred from the short term to the long term. So once you're safe, and then you can move into a place of emotionally engaged, you have officially locked in your student. I mean, when I learned this, it just shattered my brain. I don't understand why they don't teach this along with every teaching avenue. I don't know. I just feel like this is something that we should all know. And it's not something that I think I'm hearing that much, because the lowest priority of information is literally everything else. It doesn't matter how pretty your presentation is, including my own. It doesn't matter how significant the information is that we're teaching. If we don't make sure our students are safe and emotionally engaged, they're not going to learn it. It's just the way that their brain is right now. It doesn't matter how much I nerd out on how the stars are connected to the seasons and all of that other crazy stuff that makes me as an educator so happy. It doesn't necessarily equate to connection for our students. It's such a unique machine, our brain. There are so many different idiosyncrasies to them, and all of our brains are very specific, but there is a great divide. How do we look at the fact that there is the immediate use of our brain that is very sensory based? And if we are challenging our students to work in their short-term memory, it's a lot of reciting things or reiterating things, but it's for an immediate response, which if we were to equate this to the digestive system, it would be like vomit. It's coming right back to us, but it's not actually sinking below the surface of the long-term memory. What is, however, is that working brain. That working brain is like chewing on that thing for a while until you decide to swallow it down and divide it into your nutrient system. That is a process that takes more finesse, as I put down at the bottom here. Have you heard the Hamilton musical? Seriously, that's the best example I can give. It's a creative interpretation of the history, something that automatically engages the students because it's fun, it's relevant, it sounds like what they're listening to on the radio, it's well thought out. Geez, the way that Lin-Manuel uses his literary just to communicate something that should be understood. Everyone takes U.S. history. You'll never understand history like you would if it comes from a creative avenue, such as Hamilton, hence its success. So let's get into some tools and tricks. These are based on things that I've used in a brain-based learning environment with my students. Of course, I'm still looking to grow these, so I'd love to hear some tools and tricks that you'd have. I'll give you a place for that toward the end, and I'm just going to focus on those three things. 1, the safety piece; 2, the emotional engagement; and then 3, everything else. So number 1, safety first. I practice regular check-ins with my students in any way that I can. Two apps that I really think are amazing, one of which is free use, so I'm able to use it without getting my school to take ownership of it or get an account right away, is the Remind. Remind is an app made specifically for educators to communicate with students and parents in a quick and effective way. It's an app. You can sync it to your text messages, and you can also sync it to your emails. So it has a classroom format similar to Google Classroom, so I can click on any of my classes or groups in my case. And for instance, pancakes, it may seem a little weird that I have a group called Pancakes, but my name's Imani Hopkins. I go by IHOP often, and my homeroom group, I call them my Pancakes. So on a regular basis, not even in homeroom, I will send out a check-in, and they have to respond with the, thumbs up, thumbs down, or somewhere in between. I have one student who sends me a long decimal of her check-in of how she's feeling that day, and then also that kind of Hail Mary, help me if you need something right away. Because I'm on campus, I can make arrangements to get to them right away, or find the appropriate person to get to them. This is my makeshift, private, but still communal check-in. And I could do it from anywhere. If we have a tough conversation in homeroom, this is something that I do kind of right away just to see how everyone's doing with it. If I know that there's a lot of tests going on, APs, if there's a crunch time, I send it out of the blue and just see how they're handling things. So this is definitely not something, I don't keep it to myself. I use it often, and every once in a while I'll add a different GIF or a meme or something to make them smile. One of my students always sends me pictures or GIFs of dogs. Lovely. The second app, which I really, really advocate, I was able to meet a representative on this app, and I really hope my school will be able to take it coming into the next year, is Emote. And their subtitle is Care Before Crisis. So it's an app specifically made for an institution that, in the same way that I'm doing check-ins kind of individually by class, students do almost exit tickets of how they're feeling in that moment, and or teachers do exit tickets of students, so that they're able to for each student, write, okay, this is what was going on coming out of this class. Let's say we're talking in social studies about the Holocaust or something that was really heavy. This one particular student is feeling it a little bit more sensitive to what's going on, just so that you're aware they're at maybe a 4 on the anxiety train. That gets sent to the next block teacher, so that during passing period, you kind of know where your students are at. It really does help to communicate how the teacher can better facilitate. In this example here, the phone picture, you'll see it says the counselor is also in on this conversation too. Should I come and help right away? He's okay right now. Just got a word from the mom, forgot to take the meds. So just it's an intricate way of communicating the well-being and the mental and physical state of each of our students, so that we can be the nurturers as well as the educators that we're called to be in an effective way. Because again, safety first, this is the first thing that blocks information for our students. It's really important that we keep that in the forefront of our mind. Number 2, all the feels, all the feels. If it comes down to making sure my students know that they are loved and appreciated, they're gonna know. And some of the ways that I do that is by low impact connections. So whether it's an opener or a fun closer, I make sure that there's always time to have that brain break. I'm a dance teacher, so thinking about fun activities is not difficult. And I teach a hard curriculum. I mean, you can ask anyone who's ever gone through any of my curricular classes. It's definitely not easy. I expect a lot out of you, but I will never allow you to think that you're not having a reciprocal experience. And part of the way that I do that is I meet you exactly where you are. So one way that for my homeroom, for instance, gets to get down, one of the things that we do, we create Kahoots, which obviously we see up there. It's making learning awesome, because once you gamify something, it feels like a fun activity versus a didactic learning experience. So we use that actually to get to know each other. And our homeroom is a very close-knit family for that exact reason. We make a Kahoot based off of a form that one of our students creates, like, what is your craziest vacation story or whatever. And then as a homeroom, we play the game to see who these people are. And we compete secretly as to who is going to win. But in the process, might seem like a secondary outcome. It actually sticks, because the emotional connection reinforces the knowledge that's being learned in the process. So Kahoot is definitely something that we love to do. Another thing, especially when the season is really stressful, karaoke is the one. You see down here, Total Eclipse of the Heart actually is known by my juniors in high school. They know Total Eclipse of the Heart, partly because sometimes you just got to sing it out. You got to let it out. It doesn't matter what song it is. It doesn't even matter what you're feeling. The practice of singing or shouting just to get your emotions regulated. How often do our students have to stay quiet, or they are not allowed to communicate their feelings? So providing it in a crazy scream the song out kind of way is a good way to break the ice, need I say. Every once in a while we make music videos. There's a little screenshot of one of mine there. And then memes and selfies. Talk to them in the way that they talk to themselves, so that you can actually come down to their level. There's no point for us to stay up above them talking about what used to be. Continue to learn as an educator to meet them exactly where they are. For instance, down below, love is in the air. Wrong, actually, it's nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide are in the air. That's very educational. You can definitely use that as your opener for your chemistry lesson, whatever that is, you know? So it's not to say that learning has to be separate from fun. Fun should be the process of learning, but we have to work a little bit more strategically in how we make learning fun for our students. Lastly, like I said, literally everything else comes after this. So one way that I think it's really important to make learning effective is, let's do it together. There's no us and them when it comes to learning. The second I know everything and they know nothing, I have lost my responsibility to lifelong learning. I can't encourage lifelong learning in my students if I myself am not learning with them. So one way that I do that is usually every lesson that we have to do, whether it's given to us by the counselors or by the fund directors or whatever, if it's like a sexual assault unit, for instance, I'll take the data that we have to teach them, I'll rewrite the presentation but then I'll also share it directly with them. So if you see at the bottom, this is actually on goals, and the students all had access to it, and all of the questions that were in there, instead of just asking them nebulously to the sky, I had them respond directly into this presentation. One, to be held accountable by their students. Two, to engage them actively into the activity. This also stimulated conversation that they were able to have, but the data was not somewhere out in the short-term memory world after speaking it out. So obviously we know design thinking is definitely an appropriate avenue these days, and it's important. And then of course, there are no bad kids, only happy little classroom challenges. That is so key, because when it comes to brain-based learning, the stereotypical bad kids are the ones who don't feel safe or emotionally don't feel heard or appreciated. And without those two keys, you're not going to get anything accomplished, or you're not going to get anything through to those students. So we have to take that responsibility upon ourselves to do the best that we can, scratch the didactic teaching, and get down on the floor, get down onto their level, make learning fun, experientially, collaboratively, do learning together. Because at the bottom of the line, empathy is the core as to what we are and who we are. And teaching students how to work from empathy changes their level of responsibility to connecting the emotion behind the learning and applying it to a long-term solution, whatever that may be, because the brain is literally limitless. And we know this. We just don't know how to unlock the limitless power of it. So now at this time, in just 5 minutes or so, we're going to jump onto Twitter, and I'd love to talk and chat with you guys about anything that you saw that was exciting to you. We have 3 specific questions. I'll review them right now. How might brain-based learning influence your approach to facilitating learning? It's Q1. Q2 is, what tools have you used to incorporate brain-based learning in your learning environment? And Q3 is, how might brain-based learning revolutionize the effectiveness of your learning environment and or educational institution? These are things that I think it's important that us as educators are talking about, because we have to find those bridge gaps for our students and help them cross them. So we first have to cross those bridges. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy. I'll catch you next time.